Lots of new fragrances out there on the market, and I've got new fragrances here to talk to you about and let you know what they smell like and if they're good or not. Find out what they are coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian. I'm talking about brand new releases. Some came out late last year. The majority of them are from this year, 2024 so far. And I'm going to let you know what they smell like. Are you ready? We're going to start off with a smaller California house. This is Guy Fawkes's Nightcap. Look at this bottle. Are you guys familiar with this house? They used to be based out of San Francisco. They've moved to San Diego now, and this seems to be one of their best offerings that I've gotten my nose on. It's a tobacco boozy fragrance, somewhere in the vicinity of something like Jazz Club or Pavillon Rouge, Side Effect, and fragrances like that, but with a bit more substance. I'm enjoying this one with its smoky characteristic. So let's quickly sniff. It's created by Marc Heimgartner and Sidonie Grandperret, featuring oud, smoke, milk, leather, amber, vanilla, sandalwood, malt, bitter orange, coriander, white musk. So on the strip, it's very much in line with something like Jazz Club. On my skin, when I was wearing this, smoke, milky custard, along with the booziness, along with the tobacco, along with the oud. It's quite pleasant. It seems a bit more mass than I'm typically used to, but it's actually a really, really great fragrance somewhere in the ballpark of, like I said, Jazz Club, Side Effect, Pavillon Rouge, all these fragrances that are kind of boozy tobacco. I think this is going to be pretty popular for this house, I can tell. For me, it's probably one of the best from that house, and let me know if you're familiar with that house. And I've mentioned I'm not a big fan of Side Effect and not a big fan of Jazz Club. Sure, it is in that kind of ballpark, but there's so much going on in that one. It seems to be the most complex. And I like that kind of creamy undertone there, almost like milky, creamy custard, which I'm assuming is coming from the milk note. Next, speaking of INITIO Parfums, it's Narcotic Delight. Talking about it here. So at first I thought this was a great fragrance. The more I wore it, the more I thought, it's too close to Side Effect with a bit of a cherry on top kind of a thing. Sure, the cherry is there, but it's not about cherry for me. There's spices like black pepper, cognac, Hedione, tobacco, pink pepper, and vanilla. If you're a fan of Side Effect, and I've mentioned many times, I'm a bit bored of Side Effect, so it's not one of my favorite fragrances. Even Nightcap that I just spoke to you about is a little more exciting than Side Effect and Jazz Club. Here, it is definitely a little more exciting than Side Effect. There's some more substance about it, but I don't find it to be all that very interesting and exciting. But in the end, yeah, it's a pleasant fragrance. Too much like Side Effect to me, reminding me of Side Effect, and that's kind of what's giving it a boring kind of characteristic rather than something very exciting. I wanted a little more cherry in here, and perhaps they were maybe thinking they don't want it to be like Lost Cherry. They toned the cherry down, but I think it would have made it a little more different. So to me, it reminds me too much of Side Effect, so it becomes a bit boring. But let me know your thoughts on Narcotic Delight. I know there was a lot of hype around that one. What do you think? Put a comment down below. Let me know. But moving on to the house of BDK, it's 312 SAINT-HONORE, this one right here. Basically a fragrance inspired by their store, brand new flagship store in Paris. I can see the inspiration very much so. But I should be honest, this is a very light, airy, ethereal fragrance. It's very much inspired by the ambiance of the store. Very flowy, it's very open space, and also minimalistic. So if you're into those kind of fragrances, you will be happy with this one. But if you like beast mode, this is not a fragrance for you. Alexandra Carlin is the perfumer on this one. Angelica root, orange blossom, iris, ambroxan, ambrostar, white musk, tonka, pink pepper, and pink pepper leaves, along with Thai oud. I don't think this is about oud personally. There's not much oud. It's very much in the base. It's kind of spicy, and definitely orange blossom comes in, and that vegetal touch of the Angelica roots. It's also got a bit of a mineral effect and lots of muskiness and powderiness from the iris note. So this isn't my all-time favorite from this house. Passesoir Extrait is my favorite. And then the second favorite happens to be Velvet Tonka, which is also from the same perfumer. And this same perfumer has also created an Orange Blossom Neroli fragrance for this house. I'm drawing a blank. Villa Neroli, I think is what it's called. So maybe there's some, you know, notes from that fragrance onto this. But I think those of you that like airy fragrances, you're going to probably be satisfied with that one. It's more of a skin scent. It's musky, it's clean, it's minerally, and very airy, ethereal. Oh, this next one, I've been hyping it quite a bit because it's so good. From the house of MANCERA, it's AMORE CAFFE. This one right here. Are you guys familiar with this one? It's so, so delicious, guys. This and the previous release before this, I'm not sure if it's exactly the previous release, but it was Tonka Cola. Both of them are really, really great gourmands, with AMORE CAFFE being my favorite from MANCERA right now. It's super delicious, inspired by an affogato, one of my favorite treats to have. Basically, vanilla ice cream just drizzled with espresso. It's so, so delicious. If you guys haven't had it, please do. It's really, really good. And this is basically a fragrance inspired by that. The only thing is this one becomes very vanillic. The coffee doesn't last as long, but upon initial spray, it's basically a mixture of the vanilla and coffee, and it's so delicious. It's vanilla ice cream, black coffee, vanilla, amaretto liqueur, and vanilla pods, I believe. These are the notes. And again, if you've never had affogato, you've got to get your nose on this. Or I should say, you got to eat some affogato and then have, you know, some of this AMORE CAFFE spritzed as well. It's really, really great. I really, really love this. Really love it. And it's a vanillic fragrance, basically. It's vanilla, but, you know, with that kind of coffee start up top. Yep, the coffee's there. There might be a little bit of kind of nuttiness in there. I think there's also the note of heliotrope in here. But, man, it's good. It's good. Very, very delicious. And speaking of gourmands, this is Guerlain's FEVE Gourmande. This came out towards the end of last year. I should do that right there. And again, this is a redo of Gourmande Coquin. It's now renamed FEVE Gourmande, created by Delphine Jelk. Originally, I think it was created by Terry Wasser, featuring notes of cocoa, chocolate, rum, spices, woods, patchouli, smoky tea, rose. For me, I felt like this fragrance has always been subdued. But as a fragrance, it's super, super delicious. And it reminds me of very delicious, decadent, you know, chocolates and pralines and things like that you buy from a very, very expensive shop that sells like the most luxurious chocolates. That's what it reminds me of. I like this fragrance quite a bit. It's super delicious. But for me, it's lacking some substance. And I've asked some people say yes, some people say no. I don't know. But maybe for you, it's really super potent. But for me, I wanted some oomph from it. But once I get past that, the smell is super fantastic. I absolutely love it. I think this is the ultimate in a Valentine's Day fragrance because there's a bit of rose in here as well. Again, it's really, really delicious. Really, really wonderful. I don't know how they came up with the way this fragrance smells, the right mixture and things like that. But again, as I said, this is like the ultimate in Valentine's fragrances. It smells like Valentine's desserts with some roses and chocolates and things like that. It's super amazing, but I wish it was even more potent. Again, do let me know if it's potent for you or not. But moving on to the House of Hermes, it's a men's release. H24 Herbes Vives. Herbe Vive is how it's supposed to be pronounced. This, I think, is my favorite flanker. Next to the EDP, which was my favorite between the EDP and EDT. Now, this has become my favorite. I really love the pear juiciness in this. There's this frozen, icy, clean, kind of a juicy pear granita note. And it adds this very juicy fruitiness against all the aromatics that are in here. Created by Christine Nagel. This is the third fragrance in this series of H24 fragrances. And it's notes of fresh herbal bouquet, pear granita, and Psycool or Fizzcool. It's a proprietary ingredient that is kind of aromatics and herbs and mints and things like that. I can totally see that. But some of you might be not really into aromatics. Aromatic notes can go very masculine too. But for me, I think the pear granita that's in here really tones it down and even takes it to a unisex level. And also that kind of ice cooling effect that's in here, because the granita is ice like a frozen pear dessert. And so that kind of an effect is really great in this. So I think this is a great flanker, and I don't see it selling here in the States yet. Or maybe it is selling on the Hermes website, but I don't see it at any stores. But it's good. This is really, really good. I really like this one. Herbe Vive from the House of Hermes in the H24 line. Next, we're going to the House of Imaginary Authors. It's the Language of Glaciers, this one right here. Are you guys familiar with this one? the indie niche house of imaginary authors from the city of Portland, Oregon. So this is a fragrance created by Josh Meyer, and it's featuring notes of white pine, lilacs, cashmere, juniper, forget-me-not, blue bugle, and virgin snowfall. For me also, there's a lot of petrichor-like smell in this, and the smell of the earth. So it's a frozen cold fragrance with a kind of very earthiness, but also the lilacs comes through. But for me, it's not a lilac bomb, but the lilac is there and present, and you'll notice it. But it's nicely blended with a lot of the other notes, the pine, the cashmere, the juniper, and then that petrichor-like earthy smell that's in here. Very, very unique for me. I don't think this is my favorite fragrance of this house, but it's got this very frozen winter fragrance idea or concept that's kind of, I should say, this fragrance is kind of like the season that's between winter and spring, and I feel like there's this frozen icy experience, but you know, it's melting and kind of like the seasons are changing, so it's like a between season from winter to spring, because there's spring smells in here, but it's also cold and frozen. There's the earth, the snow, and all that. The idea is great, I think. Really, really great. It's not one of my favorite fragrances from this house, but it's also not a disappointing fragrance, I think. So this is the Language of Glaciers from the House of Imaginary Authors. Do let me know if you're a fan of that house or if you've got your nose on that one. So we've got a few feminine targeted releases back to back. Going to the House of Chloe. This is Nomade Nuit d'Egypte, this one right here. I should show it to you like this. This is the first Chloe fragrance I bought that's new. I have a couple of vintages here and there throughout the studio, but I was in France and I sampled this and I really enjoyed it and I picked it up. I don't know if this brand sells in the States, if they come to Macy's and stuff, but I quite like this one. It's the first fragrance I bought in the Nomad series. This is created by Juliet Karagözoglu. Sounds like a Turkish name. It's orange blossom, myrrh, cinnamon, ginger, vanilla, apopanax, cypriol, CAFFE, and broom. Once again, it's kind of like a orange blossom, citrusy kind of a fragrance against the warmer notes and vanillic notes and things like that. In this case, it's an amber, and it says it's Nuit d'Egypte, so I guess the night of Egypt or Egyptian night. I enjoyed this one. It's really great creation, I think. For a designer, I'm not speaking for like the niche world and stuff, but for a designer, it smells fantastic. It might remind you of things like YSL's Libre and all those kind of like orange blossomy warm notes combo fragrances, but I think she did a great job. I think that's a really fantastic offering. Same thing with this next one for the ladies. Again, once again discovered in France. This is Lancome's La Vie est Belle Extrait. This one actually kind of hints at Dior Homme Intense of all things. This is a flanker to the long-standing La Vie est Belle collection, and this is created by Dominique Roupillon along with Anne Flippo over at IFF. The notes are oud, iris pallida, frankincense, red fruits, damask rose, and also bergamot. I was with a friend from Paris. We were smelling fragrances, and she was like dissing the house and this particular collection, and I said, no, this smells good, and I'm not a big fan of this collection either. She was impressed how great it was. Yes, it does have a Dior Homme Intense like vibe, but more not as sweet like Dior Homme Intense, a bit more vegetal with the iris, but behind there's also a bit of makeup like effect. It's really good. I'm not really gotten into original, but if you're looking for a really great designer fragrance, this stuff smells great. I think the iris in there is really, really wonderful, and I think it's the iris and the rose that's creating a bit of a makeup effect, and we get that with Dior Homme Intense anyway. I'm not saying this is identical to Dior Homme Intense, I'm just getting that kind of a vibe with it, and I quite like it for a feminine release. In fact, I like that one a little more than the Chloe, which makes sense because I love iris. But moving on to the House of Kayali, it's Oudgasm Smoky Oud 7, this one right here. So this is created by Hamid Moradi Kashani. It's the 5th Oudgasm fragrance after Rose Oud, Vanilla Oud, Cafe Oud, and Tobacco Oud. Cafe Oud is still my favorite, but I feel like this is going to be popular. This is also something in that line of Tom Ford's Oud Wood. It's that kind of an oud. It's mostly woody, earthy. There's some light booziness, things like that, and ambery touches happening in here as well. But anybody a fan of Oud Wood might dig something like this. It leans masculine, whereas the rose and the vanilla might lean feminine. But yeah, I enjoy this one. Again, we're not breaking any new ground, but it's a good quality creation, I think. And definitely it has that kind of a Middle Eastern vibe. The oud does smell like the bukhur oud that you burn. There's that about it. But I think I'm getting a little bit of rose in here as well. There's no mention of it, but I think it's the saffron that's tricking my nose. But yeah, I think it's quality. Again, Cafe Oud is still my favorite, but that one's pretty solid. Up next, the new one from the house of Atelier Materi. It's Cedra Figalia. This one right here, focusing on cedar and figs. This will remind you of fragrances like Philosophes or Premier Figuier from the house of L'Artisan Parfumeur. But for me, those fragrances, I guess I don't want to use the word common, have become very common now. We know it. We really have smelled it. We've gone to Diptyque over and over again. People wear it, things like that. It's very recognizable. And sure, this will remind you of those fragrances, but the fig leaves in here are so realistic compared to that fragrance. This one really jumps out at me, even though I'm thinking it does remind me of those two fragrances. This is with cedarwood, fig leaves, mate, spinach, basil, dry woods, fig milk, bergamot, Jamaican pepper. It's not only fig leaves, you've got the pepperiness, the bitterness, the earthiness, greenness, and that whole distinct fig leaf note in here, but you've got that mate, you've got spinach. This is a new note that we haven't seen come up, and of course that aromatic herbal touches of the basil. So basically boosts up the greenness and the earthy herbal qualities of the fig leaves in this and creates for a very distinct smell. Let's quickly smell it so I can give you a little bit more info on this. But to me, this is definitely going to be very solid. Anybody looking for green figgy fragrances definitely should check this one out. And typically we're used to seeing sandalwood with fig leaves. Maybe it's not the first time I'm seeing cedarwood with fig leaves, but we're getting a creamy, creamy rendition of cedarwood here, almost reminding me of sandalwood. But wonderful offering. Again, it will remind you of Philosophes, Premier Figuier. It's kind of sort of done in that way, but for me, the fig leaves and along with the other three notes, mate, spinach, basil, they really do jump out at you. Really, really great offering. This is Cedra Figalia from the house of Atelier Materi. Alright, next fragrance, we're going to the house of Creed. It's Creed's Queen of Silk. This one right here. I thought this was fairly unisex leaning, and I think that that's what's going on with Creed. They're doing some gender bending things with their releases, whereas some of the male fragrances come off unisex like Virgin Island Water and things like that. And this, I'm not saying it's uber masculine, but it's also not uber feminine. This is what Queen of Silk looks like. Saffron, passion fruit, vanilla, myrrh, ambroxan, osmanthus, magnolia, oud, patchouli, cedar, musk, and incense. So this is under the new parent company now, Kering, I believe. There's a little bit of a Middle Eastern edge about this one. I don't hate it. It's not one of my loves. But the saffron's really prominent, and there's a creamy consistency about it. I think it'll satisfy some people, and anybody into the idea of Middle Eastern fragrances kind of leaning fruity might dig this one. Again, not my all-time favorite, but I think it's pretty solid. It's not anything that smells bad. But the next fragrance I'm talking about is Celine's Cologne Celeste. It came out late last year, and finally going to talk to you about it here. This is definitely a very fresh fragrance. It's very citrusy, and it actually paying tribute to like the eau de cologne fragrances of yesteryear. So it's got a very classic vibe, but still a very modern interpretation of a very classic cologne style fragrance that you might be remembering something like 4711, but something with a lot more substance. This is neroli, citruses, lemons, orange blossom, aromatic notes, ambrette, and that trademark orris that is used in a lot of Celine fragrances. But I should say the orris is not necessarily very prominent in here. For me, it's kind of a combo of beautiful, gorgeous citrus flowers with kind of green citruses and also, juicy, sweet, tart citruses along the way. And of course, there's that ambrette note to give it that kind of additional powdery edge and also the muskiness that is typically found with ambrette. And the only other thing is the aromatics that are in here is what's also creating a bit of greenness here. It's kind of a bit of herbal touch against all the citruses and citrus flowers. Let's quickly smell this. I think it's a really great fragrance. It's a nice large size. Might be a bit too expensive for some people for, luxury eau de cologne fragrances, but they have a lot of different products in that collection. Next, it's Acros East, this one right here. Are you guys fans of Acro? So this is Acro's oud fragrance. And I have to say, it smells like a lot of other oud fragrances I'm familiar with. So we're not breaking any new ground with this one. And I find it to be nicely done. I'm just a bit bored of oud. And for me still, the brand's solid standout fragrances are Smoke, Dark, Awake, even Ink is good, and Night is good. This one might be somewhere around Night. I'm not sure which would come first, but for me, my top 4 would be Smoke, Dark, Awake, or Awake, then Dark, then Night. But still, it's nicely done. I've smelled fragrances like that many times. Next, going to the house of Parfums de Parfum, it's Comet Paradis, this one right here. Comet Paradis 62 is what it is. So this one is kind of like an evolution of their Milky Musk. I'm always forgetting, is it Milk Musk or Milky Musk? It's Milky Musk first with Parfums de Parfum. Then Molton Brown came out with Milk Musk. So I'm always getting them confused. So this is kind of like the evolution of Milky Musk in that it is sandalwood again, very creamy, but going into a light gourmand direction with coconut and cacao. There's also musk and tonka beans here. So there's a little bit more of a substance here. You're almost like, you know, when they say sandalwood is kind of milky lactonic, this is giving us a little bit of a chocolate milky edge. So if you like Milky Musk, definitely check this one out. But you might not notice too much differences because it's not necessarily uber substantial with the coconut and cacao. But totally, when you put them side by side, you'll notice the difference. But in the end, it's still a very cozy fragrance. So that's Parfums de Parfum Comet Paradis 62. So a few more fragrances left, and I've got a bonus option for you guys as well. The next fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of Aids de Venustas. This is CAFFE Tabac, this one right here, created by Bertrand Duchaffoul. So this is chock full of so many different notes. I'm not going to read you all the notes. I have them listed in the info box, but it's a tobacco, boozy, fruity, spicy fragrance. It might remind you a little bit of something like Tea for Two from the House of L'Artisan. And go figure, you know, Bertrand did a lot of fragrances for L'Artisan, although Tea for Two is created by Olivia Jacobetti. They're not the same, but again, it's a really nice fragrance here, really complex, lots of spices, lots of fruits, lots of tobacco, maybe a bit boozy, but I don't think there's like real authentic boozy notes listed in here. And then also it hinting a little bit at tobacco vanille. So I think this will satisfy a lot of folks. I had to do a side-by-side comparison with tobacco vanille. But yeah, it's also got a bit of freshness. The freshness is coming from fresh apple note. The apple kind of stands out. It's like a green juicy, or maybe just a regular, but more like a green juicy apple note. Really nicely done, I think. Very complex. I still prefer Caron's Tabac Exquis, but that might be competing with Tabac Exquis. The last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about, and this probably came out sometime mid last year, it's Van Cleef & Arpels Moonlight Rose. I'm just getting my bottle now. Created by Fabrice Pellegrin. It's patchouli, Bulgarian rose, Taif rose, geranium, pink pepper, oak moss, and raspberries. And again, Moonlight Patchouli was created by Sonia Constant. So this is not necessarily a flanker of that fragrance, because it's another perfumer, maybe similar idea, but this one going into a very spicy rose direction, and the rose is amplified, whereas Moonlight Patchouli, there was rose in it, it was more of a chypre, and the rose was a little bit more of an afterthought. Here it's really amped up with patchouli and geranium as well, so you're getting a lot of rose with patchouli and geranium. It's pleasant, but I've smelled fragrances like this, but you know, it's nicely done. But either way, that's Moonlight Rose from the house of Van Cleef & Arpels from their collection extraordinaire fragrances. Anyway, those are my thoughts on these fragrances. Does anything sound good to you? Have you gotten your noses on these ones as well? Do let me know what you think about them. Put a comment down below. Some are good, some are not bad. Some I think will satisfy some people, but do let me know which one sounds great to you if you haven't gotten your nose on any of them. But other than that, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. So last but not least, I've got this fragrance. It's been out for many years. It's just getting a worldwide release right now because it was an exclusive to the Xerjoff boutique in Torino, Turin, Italy. This is Via Cavour 1. Are you guys familiar with this one? I've mentioned this fragrance throughout, my channel here and there. It's a nice gourmand. It's definitely quite delicious. It's chocolate, but with a quince note. Love the smell of quince flowers and the fruit itself. If you've ever smelled the fruit off trees and picked it, that smell really is so strong it gets on your hands. And I like that they're using quince in here. It's quince, white peach, rose, dark chocolate, caramel, vanilla, musk, and cashmere. It's the right kind of fragrance, very much like what Xerjoff does with fragrances. It smells super fantastic. The dark chocolate is there. The caramel gives it kind of that honeyed, sweet, sticky kind of a smell. The fruitiness of the peach and the quince, the rose, the musk. Very good. Really, really yummy fragrance. I don't know how long this will be available worldwide, but I guess, as I said, it's Via Cavour 1. That is the address of the Xerjoff boutique in the city of Torino, where the brand is based out of. So now it's a worldwide release, and maybe it's not going to be too long. But if you are interested in the idea of Via Cavour 1, then get your nose on it right away, because, again, I don't know how long it'll last. Anyway, see you guys later. Bye.